Today we're going to do a sneak peek on a future post. So this is basically a post just to kind of whet your appetites on something that might be or that will be happening in the near future. So next Tuesday we're going to be posting on covert communications. So what we're going to talk about is kind of how covert communications happened back in the Cold War. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do in this day and age at the civilian level to replicate this method of communication. So oftentimes what would happen is we'd want to send a signal to an agent in the field to give them instructions, give them information, whatever. And so what we use is a one-way voice link. And so if you're in Langley, let's say, you could broadcast out using a, essentially, you're broadcasting out on a shortwave radio, bouncing, you can, directly, this can go a few thousand miles, but you can bounce a signal off the ionosphere and get anywhere in the world. So Langley can essentially broadcast out across borders from a safe location, whether it be, from the U.S. or an allied state, to their agent that's in place. And it's important that it's a one-way because we don't want the agent to be broadcasting back. Otherwise, the KGB or whomever the adversary is going to know where they're broadcasting and who they potentially could be, and will obviously be intercepting those signals. So the one-way voice link is often referred to as a number station because what we hear are a series of numbers, letters, or data bursts that are being transmitted out. And so nobody knows who's receiving it, and nobody knows what is being said other than that agent. So that agent, back in the Cold War days, would have a one-time pad where they could decode that. And if you're not familiar with one-time pads, we have a whole post on that where you can, and some exercises where you can learn how to code and decode using a one-time pad. The other thing that they would use, aside from a one-time pad, might be even a newspaper that they can use as a key to decipher the code. And they would be listening on something similar to something like this. This is a digital version of a shortwave radio. So for $20 and the cost of a newspaper, you can send out a signal with a HF radio to anyone in the world, and they can receive that message. And so this is a very safe and easy way to send a message to your agent out in the field. Now, where it gets a little complicated is if that agent wants to get a message back to Langley. And so there's a lot of technology that was used, and a lot of different methods, and we talked about it in the post. We'll talk about a few of those specifically. But essentially what that agent is going to need to do is the agent is going to send that message out to an intermediary. Before some of the more technological advances, they would meet with maybe a case officer out in the field. But that's risky. Two people getting together, being followed, not the easiest thing to do. So what would happen is an agent or two officers would communicate through a short-range agent communications. Short-range agent communication. And there's different technology that was developed on both sides to represent this. But essentially, we can just think of it as text messages. So these are encrypted text messages that are sent. And so basically, the agent can communicate with this device. And then what they might often do is then go to the nearest embassy and broadcast with their device to electronic dead drop. And that electronic dead drop then would receive the message, and then some embassy person would then broadcast it back via a secure uplink, satellite uplink, back to headquarters. And so, we can use today what took millions of dollars of development. We can use today in just a simple Raspberry Pi Zero, $5 Raspberry Pi Zero that you can turn into electronic dead drop. All you have to do is download the software for Pirate Box onto your SD card, plug it in, throw in some power, and if you got Wi-Fi, you can connect a electronic drop box very inexpensively, very quickly. And you can hide this board in any kind of concealment device with a remote battery pack, and basically hide this anywhere: rocks, bushes, trees, cafe, wherever. And your agent can send a message to this, pictures, text, whatever, and then that can be then picked up and sent back to your embassy or headquarters. So essentially, creating some kind of levels of compartmentalization and keeping that agent as safe as possible out in the field so that they don't get caught up. Now, many of the non-official cover agents that are out there might not be using the same kind of technology these days, because you can use embedded technology or technology that's embedded into a cell phone, where you have to go into a web page and click a bunch of different options to open up the communications channel port or channels on your cell phone, that is completely hidden and could never be detected by anyone if they were going to look at your cell phone. So it makes kind of a very, very convenient lifeline, because that can be in your pocket to get back to headquarters. But in the event of a natural disaster or any type of situation where there's a loss of cell phone coverage or data coverage, sometimes these old school methods are still out there that can still work, so you can still get messages out to people who have the limited amount of technology. And so it's just kind of a cool part of history, but also a great kind of skill set to know and to fall back on should you ever need that. So this was the one-way voice link Cold War communication system.